question about appreciative inquiry as an approach in contrast to or in relationship to this systems approach. And that's also tied to the question of whether you're seeing more receptivity to this in other cultures other than perhaps American culture or Western culture. It looks like there's quite a bit of traction with Asian companies that you've worked with. Can you comment both on the appreciative inquiry distinction and also where you feel like this has had the most traction?
Yeah, so I would say, so there is a whole group of methodologies, and I would all refer to them all, including, of course, AI, as awareness-based social technologies, right? So they are all kind of based on the same fundamental assumptions, sort of the ones that I suggested. You could, frame them a little bit different, but it's kind of a similar set of assumptions, and they all belong. That's why I use this awareness-based social technologies or kind of awareness-based systems change, because it is intentionally not called like you process there. It's not like that specific methodology, but it's more like an umbrella term that would be inclusive of many other methodologies that share the same basic principles. And the way then, for example, the U process is being used is as a meta framework, because it allows you to bring in AI, for example, is particularly useful when you go down on the left-hand side of the U. There's kind of many great methods and tools you can use there. Maybe on the right-hand side of the U, a little less developed, right? That's where you want to strengthen that with some other approaches. And so it allows you to kind of combine the best of these methodologies. And like you, I mean, I'm like, with one part of my life, I'm like maybe a framework builder, a social technologist, kind of who is, developing social technologies, awareness-based social technologies. But, with much of my life, I'm also just a user, right? So I am working in the classroom and client situations and systems interventions. And as a user, we all have the same problem. We need to combine all these different methodologies and bring them together in a way that is that makes sense. So in that regard, that's a very familiar situation. And I think in the field, many practitioners already integrate all these tools in the way indicated. Then what was the other question?
Just the traction as far as cultures.
Yeah. So traction, yeah. So for example, when I present that in China, I would emphasize a little more. I get like, so when I present that in China, a reaction I often get is, what? Who are you? So you're like American or German American coming here telling us this. This is our stuff. This is not your stuff. This is not Western side. This is our stuff, right? So what you're talking about. So there's like, so that's a reaction I often get, right? And that has led me to say, yeah. So to say, yeah, you already know, right? So, maybe through Cultural Revolution and other disruptions, kind of, so I basically, I'm going there as a Westerner and giving them permission to reconnect with their own best sources of their traditional culture. And of course, over the years, you learn to bring in some of these elements a little more, right? Kind of how does the essence of Buddhism, of Confucianism, of Taoism really relate to that? And so I would bring that out a little more, right? Kind of in the later stages of a process, when you more come to the bottom of the U, more to the spiritual dimension. And like in Indonesia, the biggest Muslim country on earth, then they say, well, this is kind of the essence of, of our religion. So that kind of the open mind, open heart, open will, and and then they exemplify that in different versions, even though that may not be the orthodoxy, right? Kind of that is maybe more dominant. But at least in Indonesia, kind of, I have got similar reactions there. I would say, so for Asian, in India, I have just personally less experience, but just from individual encounters, I'm going less regularly there. But of course, I mean, India sees itself as the mother of all religions anyhow. So everything comes from there at the end. So yeah, so there is also deep connections there. With particularly on the realm of the distinction between small s self, capital S self, right? Small s self, my current ego, and capital S self, my highest future possibility. So I wouldn't spell that out usually, but I mean, everyone, who knows a little bit of kind of the context, knows that this has been a major theme, kind of, also in the Hindu and the Indian kind of spiritual tradition. So, yeah. So when you say Western religions and Eastern religions or wisdom traditions, clearly there is, on the Eastern side, there are many connections. But I always, so for me, it's never about religion, or I don't even emphasize that, since mostly, like the rest of us, we work with diverse groups of people. So my goal is actually to giving a terminology and methods and tools that allows people to pay attention to the deeper level of their experience, right? Kind of particularly on the third and fourth level of the U. So the more subtle aspects of our experience, and to not buy into religious dogma, but really being more precise and connecting with your own experience, which is really what science is about, right? So I'm more kind of interested at that interface, letting the data talk to you, let your experience talk to you, and become more a black belt in how we observe, how we listen, how we connect, how we, when we engage with a situation, really connect not only on the level of the mind, but also on the other levels of knowing. That's really what is practical value, because when you deal with disruption, that's the kind of knowing that really is then more relevant for you. So coming back to your question, so where does it resonate most? The user, if you just go by numbers, we have like 3 clear biggest user numbers, which is North America is one, Europe, the other one, and then China, East Asia. That's the third one. Those are the 3 main clusters.